Revealed: how an arrogant billionaire's son discovered transformative love after pushing a maid. Julian Hart had always felt untouchable, cocooned in the lavish comforts of his family's Westwood estate. He was the heir to a tech fortune, a life steeped in wealth, privilege, and the kind of arrogance that came with endless resources. To him, the world outside his gilded cage was merely a blur. People served him, not the other way around. Until that moment, when an impulsive rage spiraled into chaos. Maria had been one of the few faces in the estate that Julian recognized as more than just furniture. She was the maid, exceedingly hardworking, and on that day, she had dared to interrupt him mid-rant over some trivial inconvenience. The words flew out of him like daggers, sharp and calculated. "Just stay out of my way," he barked, his voice striking a nervous chord in the air. In a fit of frustration, he pushed her aside. The stunned look in her eyes revealed a shock that felt alien to him. For a fleeting second, the world fell silent, the weight of his action crashing down on his conscience like lightning. Was this who he had become? A man who wielded his power without thought, like a sledgehammer to fragile glass? The immediate sense of shame that crept in made his stomach churn. He was supposed to be better, wasn't he? The whispers around the estate began to seep out into the wider community, a stain on the family name that Julian had prided himself on. In the days that followed, he grappled with the implications of what he had done, starting to realize that his upbringing had shielded him from understanding life's harsher realities. Pressures mounted around him, restricting his breath, and a gnawing guilt settled in, a viscous weight that he couldn't shake. In his search for answers, he sought out Robert Sinclair, a retired professor and family friend who had been a mentor to his mother. The wise old man with a penchant for critiquing wealth pierced through Julian's bubble of arrogance. "You have to understand, Julian," Robert said, leaning closer during their conversations. "Wealth should offer perspective, not seclusion. It is only through struggle that we learn what it really means to live." As Julian immersed himself in art, a side he had long dismissed, he began pouring his tumult into paint and canvas, seeking to channel the confusion in his mind. Each brushstroke was an outpouring of guilt and longing, a vibrant reflection of his tormented spirit. Was he really empty beneath his facade? Had he built his life on superficial dreams, those palatial gatherings, exclusive parties, and casual affairs devoid of authenticity? Maria's resilience offered a contrast, illuminating the depths of his shallowness. They began to talk more regularly, sharing snippets of each other's lives. Her ambition to become a doctor captivated him, a dream somehow pure and real, unlike his shallow aspirations. He listened as she articulated her hopes, and for the first time, he felt a genuine connection to someone outside his aristocratic circle. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But looming doubts clouded his heart. What would his family think? What would the world say? As he caught himself hesitating to voice his feelings, he stumbled upon Maria's hidden history, a lineage of accomplished doctors, her dreams not so far-fetched after all. How could he honestly pursue her while basking in his inherited comforts? A societal chasm stretched between them, each inch shadowed by whispers of social inequality. The weight of the gallery invitation felt like a heavy yoke. To pursue art meant inviting disdain from his family, but to remain stagnant felt like betraying the growth he had fought for. Standing at the precipice of change, the scream of uncertainty echoed in his mind. Could he break free from the gilded chains of his inheritance? Could he risk it all for someone who had unveiled joy and simplicity? The tension crackled between them, unresolved and brimming with unspoken words, leaving Julian to ponder the greatest dilemma of his life. Would he take that leap or surrender to his past? In that crucial moment, as he stared at the canvas before him, the answer hung just out of reach, pregnant with the promise of transformation, and the desperation of his familiar world clawed at him anew. Julian's hands trembled as he brushed the canvas, layering the gouache with raw emotion that he struggled to articulate. Each stroke was a desperate grasp for understanding, for transformation, but often, the more he immersed himself in this new world of expression, the more he felt the weight of his past threatening to crush his burgeoning aspirations. This tension between his previous life and the tangible desire to shift his identity made his head swirl. In the days after his confrontation with Maria, Julian found himself in a difficult cycle. He would paint late into the night, winding through a labyrinth of colors and shadows that felt as chaotic as his heart. The gallery invitation loomed ominously, a beacon of doubt and anticipation. What if he revealed himself, both as an artist and a man, to the world? The very thought terrified him. Would he be ridiculed, dismissed as just another wealthy dilettante, or would he find acceptance? His interactions with Maria grew into a subtle dance of encouragement and fear. When she smiled and shared her dreams, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Yet, when the weight of reality settled back in, that flicker dimmed under the pressure of expectation. "Julian, you need to stop hiding," she said one afternoon as they leaned over paint-splattered canvases in the studio. Her voice was soft but firm, slicing through his uncertainty. "You have a gift. Use it." Her faith felt like both a lifeline and a burden. It gave him direction, but also amplified the scrutiny of his choices. Each time he ventured to express this newly discovered passion for art, he had to confront the truth of who he was versus who he wanted to become. Was he merely following her lead, or was this awakening truly his own? That evening, as he traipsed beneath the looming shadows of the estate, Julian made a decision. He would show his paintings at the gallery, not only to exhibit his work, but to reclaim a part of himself he had long buried under arrogance and wealth. It felt radical and terrifying. Could he possibly risk rejection, not just from the art world but from his family? Would they brand him a pariah for stepping into territory unseen by others of his social stature? He rented a modest studio in a vibrant part of town, one where the streets pulsed with life, art, and resilience. Day after day he would walk there, rallying against the familiar pain that threatened his resolve. Each step toward the studio felt like he was wrestling with past enemies: entitlement, vanity, and an overwhelming fear of being seen. In this new environment, he found himself mingling with artists, each struggling with their own demons, but driven by a shared passion. Their authenticity stirred something deep within him, awakening an insatiable curiosity. The closer the gallery event approached, the more critical his thoughts became. Had he created merely for the sake of expression, or was he clinging to the hope of being accepted? The weight of ambition was suddenly less a burden and more an anchor, grounding him in the reality of his choices. On a stormy night, a reflection of the tumult in his heart, Julian stood in front of a large canvas, the brush making frantic sweeps as if channeling his inner turmoil. "This is your moment," he whispered to himself, driven by the flickering image of Maria's encouraging smile. But as he added splashes of crimson, the doubt seeped in deeper, twisting around his instincts. What if in pursuing this art, he lost everything that had defined him? With the gallery only days away, Julian faced an internal storm, poised on the brink of redefining his legacy. Emotions tumbled through him as he sought clarity, wrestling with the sudden realization that to change, to take the leap into a life of authenticity, was to invite both joy and damnation. The moment built, a sweet ache and a challenging ultimatum, until finally he turned toward the door, knowing he'd have to confront both family and self as they collided under the gallery's glaring lights. The reluctant artist within him readied for battle with the invisible weight of the world at his back. Stepping outside, he took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of rain-soaked earth and possibility. Would he truly have the courage to embrace the unknown? The gallery awaited, holding secrets of his own making, and the next step would either shatter or illuminate him. The dawn broke with a relentless intensity, flooding Julian's studio with a harsh light that illuminated the chaos he had created. Paint tubes lay scattered across the table, remnants of his late-night battles. The vivid colors that once felt liberating now seemed suffocating, mocking him as he surveyed the canvas still awaiting his touch. Gazing out the window, Julian felt the pulse of the vibrant street. He caught glimpses of life outside, people weaving in and out of small shops, laughter breaking the rhythm of a city eager to welcome spring. Yet within him, winter lingered. The storm of doubt that had gripped him just days before had not dissipated. It had morphed into a paralyzing haze, making the canvas before him feel like a mirror reflecting his own confusion. "Am I really capable of this? Am I just putting on a show?" he whispered to himself as his hand hovered over a brush. The very act of painting became both a confrontation and a retreat. He painted to assert his identity, yet with every stroke, he felt the pressure of expectation pushed down on him. Maria's face surfaced in his mind, her encouragement now feeling like a weight around his neck, rather than a source of inspiration. "You have a gift. Use it." The mantra played on repeat, accompanied by the gnawing thought of whether this was truly his gift, or merely an escape from the life he had always known. He could still hear her voice, tinged with disappointment when he faltered. That evening, determined to shift this cycle of doubt, he resolved to confront the very source of his anxiety, the upcoming gallery showing. It meant exposure to the elite social circle that had previously defined him, a world dictated by lineage and wealth. Yet, with each passing moment, he recognized that this could also mean liberation. It could be an opportunity to redefine his place, not just in the art world, but in his own life. As Julian prepared for that pivotal night, he sought counsel from unexpected sources. He listened to his fellow artists discuss their journeys. Their stories resonated with him, tales of rejection, loss, and rediscovery. The authenticity in their struggles lit a fire of ambition within him. This moment required more than artistic skill. It demanded emotional exposure, a daring leap into vulnerability. As he stood before the canvas, he made a bold decision to incorporate elements of his past, the very aspects he had kept at arm's length. He began with strokes of gold and gray, representing his family's wealth and the shadows of expectations they cast upon him. Layer upon layer, he poured out his spirit, revealing not just artistry, but a confessional display of his inner turmoil. Soon, he was enveloped in the act of creation, making discoveries of his own capabilities. The realization washed over him. He had more strength than he had perceived, a depth in his expression that felt inherently tied to his experience. Each mark on the canvas became a battle cry, an assertion of his right to claim this identity as his own. Hours slipped away as he poured his heart into the piece, merging past and future. The resulting work was raw yet mesmerizing, a reflection of his inner conflict, ripe with the tension of expectations versus authenticity. When he finally stepped back, breathless from the exertion, a glimmer of hope ignited in his chest. This was not just art, it was a declaration. He was ready to face the world, not as a facade of wealth, but as a man embracing the full array of his identity. As the gallery doors neared, Julian felt the cutting edge of uncertainty mingling with burgeoning exhilaration. The moment felt monumental, charged with the twin forces of fear and resolve. Would he seize this opportunity to redefine himself, or would the weight of societal judgment crush him? Determined, he crossed the threshold of his studio and stepped into the bustling streets, where life continued unabated. Each person mattered, and though he was one among many, he felt uniquely him for the first time. With the gallery opening looming on the horizon, the tension built in his chest, and he knew deep down that the time had come to accept, or reject, the life he had always known. But there was something else in the air, a whisper of fate beyond the gallery walls, touching on choices yet to be realized. What truth awaited him in the reflections of the canvases, and who would join him in this painful yet poignant journey towards self-acceptance? Julian stepped onto the bustling street, the weight of the world on his shoulders intertwining with newfound determination. Each step toward the gallery felt like a step away from the past. The cacophony of city sounds filled his ears, while the scents of fresh pastries from the corner bakery wafted through the air, a delicious reminder of life's simple pleasures amidst his chaotic thoughts. As he navigated the throngs of people, Julian's pulse quickened. In that vibrant sea of humanity, he recognized a raw beauty that transcended his previous insecurities. He couldn't afford to retreat. The upcoming show was not merely an art exhibition, but a crucible of self-discovery. Every face reflected a multitude of stories and struggles. They were evaluating him, yes, but he was also here to evaluate himself. The artist was no longer just a product of legacy, but a tapestry woven from varied threads of experience, and he allowed a flicker of pride to ignite within him. Arriving at the gallery, he was greeted with a striking facade that pulsed with the energy of creativity. Brief flashes of apprehension surged through him. He understood the magnitude of what this evening represented. Standing under the opulent chandeliers, he could easily slip into his father's world, where expectations and judgments were the currency exchanged with every social interaction. He took a deep breath, letting the chill of the air invigorate him. A sense of purpose surged, pushing the doubts toward the periphery of his consciousness. As patrons began to filter in, Julian felt the gravity of their gazes. He was no longer the child who flinched in the shadow of his father's reputation. In this moment, he forced himself to remember the freedom he had discovered on his canvas, the truth unveiled through each brushstroke. He saw Maria among the guests, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. She offered him a hopeful smile that urged him forward, anchoring him back to the reasons he had sought this path. The gallery walls loomed ahead, and with each step, Julian's heart raced. Initially, the thought of exposing his vulnerabilities terrified him. Yet tonight, those vulnerabilities were his strength, the very essence that would invite connection with others. As he approached his painting, he noticed the clusters of people that gathered around it. They whispered, pointed, and leaned in closer, eager to absorb the emotions captured on the canvas. Sensing an electric opportunity brewing, he decided to engage. He approached the group, a smile affixed to his lips. "What do you see?" he asked, letting curiosity guide his tone. They began to share their interpretations, revealing layers of meaning in his work. Each interpretation resonated with aspects of his own journey, shockwaves of understanding crackling between them. Their words sparked something profound within him, the realization that art could forge connections beyond individual struggle. It could unite disparate lives, igniting transformative conversations. Moments stretched into an insatiable blend of exhilaration and vulnerability. With each interaction, Julian found himself revealing snippets of his story. He spoke of past pressures, of how the canvas had been his sanctuary, and, now, a battleground where he confronted expectations. He sensed an undercurrent of empathy within his audience, a shared acknowledgement of the human experience laden with conflict. Yet amidst this acceptance, a flicker of apprehension emerged. Would the audience still embrace him if they knew the depth of his struggle? The insecurities beneath the painter's facade? Was his evolution from an arrogant billionaire's son to an artist genuinely embraced, or were they enamored by the surface, the aesthetics of his struggle without comprehending the tumult? Just as he prepared to ponder this further, a familiar figure shielded in shadows made its way to him. It was Nathan, his father's old acquaintance and an unforgiving critic. His steely gaze bore into Julian like ice, a silent reminder of the weight he had tried to shed. Nathan's presence threatened to tip the balance of Julian's newfound confidence. The moment hung in the air thick with anticipation. The time had come to face more than just the critics outside his canvas. It was time to confront the scrutiny of those who represented the very expectations he had fought to escape. What would Nathan say to him, and could he embrace this confrontation without a retreat into the shadows of his old life? A chill swept through Julian as Nathan drew near, his reputation as a harsh critic preceding him. This was not just another critique, this was a confrontation with the very history he sought to redefine. The gleam of judgment in Nathan's eyes made Julian's breath quicken, an involuntary response to a lifetime of expecting disapproval, especially from someone linked to his father's legacy. "Julian," Nathan began, his voice deliberately measured, slicing through the buzz of the gallery. "You've certainly stirred some conversation tonight, haven't you?" Tension coiled in Julian's gut as he met Nathan's gaze, forcing himself to stand firm. All those hours spent wrestling with his own doubts surged back, but he was no longer that frightened boy seeking approval. He had unveiled layers of his artistry, revealing truths that could no longer be dismissed. "Art provokes thought, doesn't it?" Julian replied, an edge of defiance coloring his tone. "Isn't that what we aim for?" Nathan chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "Provocation without substance is just noise. Tell me, do you believe you've achieved more than mere aesthetics tonight?" The question stabbed at Julian's core. He had poured himself into his work, articulating struggles and victories on canvases that screamed for understanding. Yet pressed by Nathan's scrutiny, Julian felt a momentary flicker of doubt. Was his art a reflection of self, or merely an elaborate performance for the audience? "Isn't it ironic that the son of a billionaire finds empowerment through struggles?" Nathan continued, leaning slightly closer. "What an exceptional story, if true." Julian clenched his fists, feeling the weight of Nathan's skepticism. This wasn't simply about his painting. It was a challenge to his identity. He could retreat into the self-doubt that had defined him for far too long or rise above it. "It's not about my past or my name, Nathan," he replied firmly, searching for clarity beneath his anger. "It's about the journey that shapes us, the complexities we embrace. Art is my escape, my dialogue with the world. It's real." Nathan raised an eyebrow, visibly intrigued, but not yet convinced. "So you're suggesting you're more than just the sum of your privilege? That you've truly transcended it?" Julian could feel the gallery's eyes on him, the weight of expectation, and he sensed a decisive moment at hand. He took a deep breath, harnessing every ounce of the resolve he had cultivated throughout this night. "I'm not trying to transcend my past. I'm using it as a foundation," he articulated, maintaining eye contact. "I can choose to create my own narrative." Nathan studied him, silence stretching between them. In that pivotal moment, Julian's heart raced, not from fear but from a burgeoning sense of self-acceptance. It was a truth unknown to him until this very confrontation, an affirmation of his evolution, not merely from expectations, but towards authenticity. "Interesting," Nathan finally remarked, nodding as if reassessing his initial impressions. "So you believe this narrative holds merit beyond this gallery? That your art can challenge perceptions, if not shift them?" "I believe it can ignite change, within others, and within myself." Julian felt sweat bead along his brow, but continued unfazed. "Tonight is just the beginning." With a slight inclination of his head, Nathan regarded Julian with a mix of respect and challenge, initiating an inflow of energy that ignited within Julian's chest. Fueled by the confrontation and the unexpected acceptance of his truth, he sensed something profound shift in him. This was not merely a battle with Nathan, but a confrontation with past versions of himself. The boy who feared judgment, who cowered under expectations. He dared to step further into the space between them. "And I'll keep pushing. Keep creating. What matters is the legacy I forge from my experiences. Not your approval, nor my father's." Nathan's gaze lingered a moment longer before he stepped back, seemingly satisfied for now. "Very well, Julian. Impress me." As Nathan retreated into the gallery's breadth, Julian turned back to the crowd, emboldened. He sensed they saw him anew, no longer just the son of a billionaire, but an artist in pursuit of honesty. Yet beneath that exhilaration lurked a deeper question. How much would he be willing to risk to uphold this newfound identity when shadows from his past threatened to resurface? What if Nathan's words followed him beyond the gallery's walls, planting seeds of doubt anew? Julian breathed deeply, braced for what lay ahead as he rejoined the vibrant discussions around him. He had borne witness to a moment of growth, but could he sustain it? The evening was far from over, and decisions loomed before him with every familiar face, forcing him to confront not only Nathan, but the lingering voices of his past, asserting themselves with chilling clarity. Would Julian stand firm, or let fear dictate his path once more? Julian felt the weight of the room settle around him as he navigated conversations that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The energy of the gallery buzzed with a newfound vitality, yet each interaction was laced with an undercurrent of insecurity that still gripped him. The faces of admirers blended with seekers of validation, their admiration pulling him like a magnet toward the familiar peril of expectation. What if they saw through the facade of confidence? What if they became intimate witnesses to the dread that constantly tugged at his core? Yet another voice broke through his reverie. "Julian, your work tonight is groundbreaking." A woman with vibrant blue hair approached him, her enthusiasm palpable. "I've never seen such raw emotion on canvas. It's refreshing." "Thank you," he replied, the sincerity in her words washing over him like a balm. But the ghost of Nathan's skepticism crept back into his mind, a reminder that interpretations could swing dangerously in the opposite direction. Was his work actually resonating, or was it merely a fleeting moment in the spotlight? "What inspires you?" she asked, a genuine curiosity lacing her tone. Julian hesitated, searching for a suitable answer. Inspiration had always seemed elusive and shape-shifting, too personal to dissect openly, yet vital to his new identity. "I think it's my constant struggle to confront my past and redefine who I want to be," he said, willing to peel back a layer for her. "I want to challenge the expectations placed on me and create something that echoes my truth." Her expression brightened. "That's incredible. It's what we need to hear." Her words, though encouraging, wrestled with the thread of doubt woven by Nathan's previous confrontation. Julian excused himself politely, finding a quiet corner where he could breathe without the weight of others' expectations. He leaned against a wall, fighting back anxiety as he replayed the evening in his head. Was art merely self-expression, or could it forge paths to deeper connections? And more painfully, was he capable of sustaining this authenticity, or would fear claw back into his life like a shadow? Amidst the internal turmoil, a flash of self-revelation hit him. It was the fear, a deep-seated fear of never being enough, that had held him hostage for so long. He had spent years chasing acceptance, while the true battle lay in granting acceptance to himself. If he truly wanted to carve his niche, it demanded more than courage. It required unyielding commitment to his artistry and his evolving self. Determined to seize the newfound understanding, Julian made his way back toward the central crowd, seeking to share the depths of his process and experiences. It was time to embrace vulnerability fully, not just as an artist, but as a man forging a new identity. Conversations that feared judgment could become dialogues of growth, if only he would dare to be brave. But before he could voice his vision, Nathan's imposing figure re-emerged in his line of sight, swirling with dominating presence. The swirling doubts resurfaced, a fight-or-flight instinct convincing him to retreat. What if Nathan now had further critiques, regardless of his resolve? "Back again, Julian," Nathan said, the edges of his mouth forming a sardonic grin. "Your attempts at deep reflection are admirable, but do you truly believe the world is ready for your brand of honesty?" Julian squared his shoulders, recalling the strength that burgeoned from within him earlier. This was the moment, the facade crackling like fragile glass. "I believe there's power in truth, even if it's not the truth everyone wants to hear. Or perhaps it's a privilege masquerading as profundity," Nathan shot back, intensity sharpening the air between them. Julian felt a surge ripple through him. The stakes weren't merely professional or critical anymore. It was about uncovering the very essence of who he was. "Don't mistake my honesty for arrogance," Julian shot back, the challenge hanging in the air like an unspoken dare. "What matters is my commitment to speaking my truth. That's where the impact resides." Nathan's expression shifted, perhaps surprised by Julian's boldness. "Very well then, let's see how long this bravado lasts when pressure mounts." Julian stared into Nathan's eyes, ready to fight for his beliefs, to stand firm against the tides of doubt and expectation. He had wrestled with the shadows of his past. Now he would not only rise, but shine. With renewed resolve, he acknowledged the crossroads ahead, but felt an electric thrill coursing through him. The journey to uphold his truth wouldn't be easy, but he would not surrender to fear. As Nathan walked away, the rebellious whisper persisted in the back of Julian's mind. Was Nathan right? How far was he willing to go to uphold this identity? The gallery pulsed with questions, both external and internal, leaving Julian on the precipice of an intense self-exploration. Would authenticity prevail in the storm ahead, or would fear lure him back into the shadows? The answers awaited him, just beyond the veil of uncertainty. Julian stood at the crowded gallery, feeling as if he were suspended between worlds, the inner turmoil and the excitement of connection. Nathan's words brewed in the recesses of his mind, an insistent reminder that authenticity had its own consequences. What if he stumbled again, revealing layers of himself that would lead to further ridicule? He needed to confront the fear that had kept him from fully engaging with his own identity. He turned away from the party atmosphere, seeking the refuge of the adjoining gallery, which had fewer patrons. The quieter space was marked by smaller, intimate pieces that captured fleeting emotions in bold strokes. Here, he could breathe without the suffocating weight of scrutiny. As he observed the art, a sense of urgency burgeoned within him. The pieces spoke of introspection, heartbreak, and resilience. What if he could channel those themes into his next creation? What if he sought to expose the jagged edges of vulnerability, instead of merely glossing over them? With every step deeper into solitude, Julian felt the friction of his dual desires, the need for acceptance and the urge to expose his raw truth. He pulled out his sketchbook and began to draw fervently, lines and colors merging into a visual confession. It took his breath away. The violence and beauty of his own emotional landscape laid bare on the pages. He wasn't just capturing moments, he was crafting a pathway to self-discovery. This was the heart of artistic commitment, he realized. It was more than confronting external expectations. It was about a ferocity to challenge and dismantle the constructs within. The earlier exchanges with Nathan morphed from a haunting presence into an engine for evolution. In this moment of catharsis, Julian pondered whether he could not only express his truth, but invite others to embrace theirs. Could vulnerability incite a movement rather than just an acknowledgement of personal experience? He envisioned unveiling a new series, one that would artistically dismantle the polished surface of his persona. This work could serve as a catalyst, encouraging others to confront their unease. Each painting would represent a facet of his identity he feared exposing, a journey into the truths that had once felt too sordid to reveal. The thought exhilarated him, propelling him forward, but doubt loomed like a specter. Yet deep down, Julian knew the only way to overcome that doubt was to step forward into the light of public discourse around vulnerability itself. He pictured himself at the forefront of that conversation, challenged but unyielding. An artist not just revealing his truth but standing in solidarity with anyone wrestling with their own. As he sketched furiously, Julian's confrontation with Nathan danced back into his mind, sharp and biting. Their confrontation lingered like a fresh wound. The more he thought about Nathan's critique, the clearer it became. The The pressure would only serve to bolster his resolve. This was a matter of his own growth, and he could no longer grant anyone else the power to define his worth. With each stroke, Julian recommitted to his journey, a journey marked by authenticity rather than posturing. When he left this gallery, it wouldn't just be as an artist, but as a vessel for truth, stripped of the fanciful adornments of traditional acceptance. The crowd outside summoned him back. He was ready now to engage with the world, to speak openly and share his struggles and triumphs. But as he approached the gallery's main space, a voice called out, interrupting his thoughts, one he recognized all too well. "Julian, you've returned." Nathan's voice cut through the crowd, thick with feigned enthusiasm. "I hope you've prepared yourself for what lies ahead." Julian felt the familiar knot tighten in his chest, but took a deep breath. The passion rose in him. The moment was ripe. He smiled, ready to confront not just Nathan, but the larger narrative of expectation and doubt. The arena awaited, more demanding than before. Would he rise to the challenge, or would fear resurrect its claim? "Actually," he began, voice steady and clear, "it's time to talk about the real pressures we face as artists." The moment of reckoning arrived as he stepped fully into the light, ready to face whatever lay beyond. Would he conjure the courage to uphold his identity amidst the clashes that would ensue? Each heartbeat echoed the question. How many truths could he wield to challenge a world that demanded a polished facade? Julian faced Nathan, who wore an expression that barely concealed smugness, the kind that suggested he anticipated a struggle. As the murmur of the crowd enveloped them, Julian's pulse quickened. Here was the moment he had stewed over, the moment where he could either retreat into silence or step forward into his truth. He took a deep breath, holding on to the excitement and fear swirling inside him. "Look, Nathan," he said, his voice finding an unexpected strength. "It's not just about what's acceptable. It's about what's real. Art should strip away all the facades, expose the underbelly, even if it feels uncomfortable." Nathan arched an eyebrow. His interest piqued. "Are you implying that your previous work lacked authenticity?" An involuntary flash of defensiveness threatened to surface, but Julian quelled it. "I'm done hiding behind pretty colors and vague metaphors. My next series is about the grit, the struggle. My struggle. It's about showing the parts of myself I used to keep hidden." For a moment the air stilled around him. The artists and patrons around them blurred into a collage of unmoving figures. His declaration hung between them, electric and disarming. Julian had set the stage, and he wasn't about to step away. "Interesting," Nathan replied, a predatory smile forming. "And how do you think the world will respond to your vulnerability? Audiences crave mastery, refinement. Will they really want your mess?" The doubt crept back in, but Julian shook it off. "Maybe that's exactly what they need. Something real. We are not flawless. We're battling insecurities every day. If I can be brave enough to put that on canvas, what might that invite in others?" The realization struck him hard. He was not just challenging Nathan, but inviting a revolution of honesty within himself. The conversation was no longer just between two artists. It felt like he was standing at the crossroads of his career. The crowd pulsed with anticipation, and whispers began to weave through the air. Julian sensed a shift. His declaration had struck a chord. He could feel the eyes upon him, some with skepticism, others with something akin to admiration. In these fragile moments, he recognized the power of vulnerability, both in his art and in this conversation. "Tell me then," Nathan taunted, his tone sharpened like a blade. "What do you think will happen when the critics weigh in? What if they slaughter you for your honesty?" Julian stood tall, a fire igniting in his chest. "Then let them. If my work resonates with even one person, if it gives them the courage to own their truths, I'll consider that a success. My art is no longer for the applause of the few who prefer perfection." A ripple surged through the gallery, and Julian relished in it. He was not merely navigating the conflict between himself and Nathan, but engaging with a much larger narrative, his evolving identity as an artist and as a person. The realization that he had the power to shift perspectives fueled his conviction. "I'll take my chances," Julian continued, unfurling an aura of determination. "Life's about risks. Every brushstroke I create now reflects a deeper understanding of who I am, who we are. I can't honor my passion by pandering to insecurity." Nathan's expression shifted, losing some of its earlier certainty. "You're going to regret this decision," he warned, though his words felt weaker now, as if he sensed the tide was beginning to shift. Julian absorbed Nathan's caution, but it only solidified his resolve. He was more than ready to explore his authentic self, and encourage others to do the same. As the crowd whirled around him, he caught a glimpse of his future, a tapestry woven from the struggle intertwining with moments of beauty. Would there be backlash? Absolutely. But perhaps there would also be connection and healing, both for him and for those who found solace in his work. But just as he began to think he might navigate this unpredictable journey, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd, his expression a blend of disappointment and concern. "Julian, wait!" It was Sophie, his former mentor, her eyes wide with a mixture of apprehension and urgency. "What are you getting yourself into?" In that moment, Julian felt the weight of another pressure pressing down on him. Would she support his newfound direction, or would she echo Nathan's doubts? He swallowed hard, this confrontation demanding an even fiercer resolve. "Let's talk," he said, bracing himself for the impending clash. Would he defend his truth, or would her words plant the seeds of doubt once more? The air crackled with anticipation as he prepared to face yet another critical moment of his journey. Julian met Sophie's gaze, a mixture of familiarity and turmoil flooding through him. She had been his guiding light during the formative years of his art, her feedback both a blessing and a chain that kept him tethered to expectations he was now desperate to escape. As the murmurs in the gallery rose and fell like waves, he sensed the tension between them thickening, each heartbeat echoing the weight of potential disappointments. "What are you doing, Julian?" Sophie's voice was lower now, stripped of her usual encouragement. "This isn't you. Have you thought about the consequences?" The crowd began to fade, the air constricting around him as he wrestled with her words. All the impulses toward vulnerability and authenticity surged within him, yet here was Sophie, a reminder of the safe path he had once walked, a path he was choosing to abandon. "I am thinking about consequences," he replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "But maybe not the kind you're worried about. I need to embrace my truth, even at the risk of everything." "Your truth?" Sophie pressed, incredulous. "Or a reckless desire for acceptance? There's a difference." Her brow furrowed as she searched his eyes for signs of the boy she once knew, conflicted, passionate, but uncertain. Julian wanted to argue, to tell her that he was finally taking charge of his narrative. Yet, her concern resonated with an unsettling accuracy. The choice was monumental. He could hear Nathan's challenge ringing in his mind. Would audiences really connect with his vulnerability? Would it all be worth it? "You taught me that art is about honesty, about peeling away the layers to reveal the raw," he countered, feeling a steely resolve beginning to form inside. "If I can't be true to what I feel, then what's the point? I refuse to create in the shadows of what others expect." Sophie shook her head. "And what if they don't understand? What if they mock you? You know how audiences can be. But what if they do understand, finally? What if they find comfort in my struggles?" The passion in his voice surprised even him, revealing depths of conviction ignited by his earlier confrontation with Nathan. The moment hung in the air, both of them caught in an unspoken struggle. As the crowd shifted around them, Julian felt an inner push, a clarion call for authenticity that he did not want to stifle. He couldn't betray this new vision, one that had started to crystallize within him despite the fear of rejection. Sophie's facade began to crack, and for the first time, Julian saw doubt flicker in her eyes. "You're growing, Julian. I see that," she said softly. "But I'm just worried that you're trying to redefine yourself too quickly. There's a reason vulnerability can be dangerous. Dangerous can be beautiful. I want to create something that speaks, not just to be admired." His voice softened, wrought with raw honesty. "If this fails, I'll learn. I need to chase this feeling, Sophie. I need to see what I'm capable of without your fears color my path." Sophie looked down, the weight of the moment pressing upon them, crunching the air between them, laden with unexpressed fears and challenges. Just as Julian anticipated her response, an acknowledgement of his conviction, or perhaps a final urging to reconsider, the ground shifted beneath them as a wave of murmurs surged. "Julian!" A new voice, unfamiliar yet compelling, broke through the banter. He turned to see a young woman approaching, eyes bright and filled with curiosity. "I heard what you said earlier. It was profound, really." Her presence was striking, an unexpected spark among the murmurs and chaos, and Julian felt an immediate connection. A flicker of intrigue ignited within him. This room filled with strangers now seemed to pulse with recognition, a call for authenticity that swelled against the doubts still simmering within him. As he prepared to engage with this new figure, he glanced back at Sophie, searching for a silent approval, an indication that it was okay to pursue this direction regardless of where it might lead. But she only smiled faintly, uncertainty lingering in her expression. Julian turned back, somehow emboldened by the unexpected interaction now unfolding before him, the tension with Sophie melting into the backdrop of this pivotal moment. But deep inside, another question began to take root. Was he ready for the dangers that authentic creation imposed? And even as admiration swirled around him, was he truly prepared for the realizations that lay ahead? Julian inhaled deeply, the air heavy with anticipation, as he ventured towards the new voice that beckoned him forward. Would this be a doorway opening to growth, or another trap waiting to be sprung? Little did he know how entwined this encounter would become in his quest for truth. In the days that followed the gallery opening, Julian found himself immersed in a whirlwind of creativity and introspection. The initial thrill of showcasing his newfound art had ignited something profound, a commitment to authenticity that propelled him toward an exploration of identity like never before. The conversation sparked by that first exposure had sparked a cascade of newfound relationships within the artistic community that not only recognized his talent, but also his evolving story. Amidst the cacophony of different voices celebrating his work, Julian began to understand that vulnerability was no longer something to be feared. It was a tool, a bridge connecting him to others. Each discussion with patrons illuminated forgotten facets of himself, allowing him to face his past while forging a new narrative. The fear that once gripped his heart began to dissolve in the wake of these affirmations. Julian spent countless nights in his studio, pouring himself into his art with a fervor that felt both dangerous and liberating. Every brushstroke was infused with layers of complexity, encapsulating the struggles he had faced and the acceptance he yearned for. He began an ambitious series, each piece delving deeper into the intricacies of vulnerability and embracing the messiness of life, a stark contrast to the polished expectations he had previously adhered to. One balmy evening, as he stood back to assess a canvas that captured the tumult of his shifting self-image, he received a call that confirmed a new direction. It was Robert Sinclair, the professor who had initially guided him toward deeper reflection. "Julian," Robert said, his voice warm yet authoritative. "I've spoken with the board of a prestigious gallery in Los Angeles, and I believe they would like to feature your work for a solo exhibition showcasing your artistic transformation." The news surged through him, a rush more intoxicating than any praise he had ever received. This was unexpected validation, not just for his artistic endeavors, but for the growth he had so feverishly sought. The exhibition would not merely celebrate the art. It would underscore his journey from a sheltered billionaire's son to a man brave enough to embrace both privilege and struggle. As Julian prepared for this exhibition, he also took time to return to Maria. Their connection had evolved beyond fleeting conversations. It infused his work with deeper meaning. They spent evenings together discussing their dreams and disappointments, their conversations shifting from casual exchanges to explorations of ambition and hope. During one idyllic afternoon, while sharing laughs over coffee, Julian confessed, "You inspired me to be better, to create honestly. Can I show you the pieces I've been working on for my exhibition?" Her face lit up, genuine interest shining through. As he unveiled his creations, Maria examined them with an artist's eye. "These are extraordinary, Julian," she marveled. "They encapsulate your journey." As she absorbed the layers of paint that reflected his soul, Julian felt a profound sense of completeness. His work garnered validation not only from the art world, but also from Maria, the very person whose resilience had sparked his transformation. He realized that genuine connection was founded on authenticity. It wasn't merely about pieces hanging on walls, but the stories they carried and the emotions they evoked. The night of the exhibition dawned, each moment a thrilling blend of anticipation and trepidation. With a deep breath, Julian stepped into the gallery, which thrummed with life and energy. Patrons from every walk of life filled the space, eagerly engaging with the art and each other, creating an atmosphere pregnant with connection. Julian calmed the storm of anxiety as he walked toward the applause that erupted around him. Audience members fingered the edges of his paintings while discussing what they saw. Emotions spilled openly, truths laid bare. He felt a sense of pride radiate from within. Not only had he accomplished a solo exhibition, but he had also accomplished something far more significant. He had discovered the power of his authentic voice as an artist. The evening unfolded like a beautifully woven narrative. With each conversation, Julian felt not just the threat of judgment, but embraced a warm sense of belonging. He found himself sharing the deeper meanings behind his work, revealing the years of struggle and the acceptance of his true self. People responded with enthusiasm, acknowledging their own lives and fears reflected within his art. As the night waned and the crowd began to thin, he spotted Nathan in the corner, still holding an air of skepticism but softer in his demeanor today. "Julian," he approached with a hint of admiration in his tone, "I must admit, you've surprised me. You've laid bare more than just paint. You've shown a path to connection and truth." Surrounded by supportive patrons, Julian felt a profound peace wash over him. The doubts that had haunted him, the fears of not being enough, shifted into a distant whisper. "Thank you, Nathan. You pushed me to dig deeper than I thought possible." As the evening drew to a close, he caught Maria's distant gaze. Her eyes sparkled with pride. In that moment, Julian understood that he had conquered not just the external expectations of the world, but had wrestled with his own insecurities and emerged victorious. The road ahead was promising, rich with possibility. And though challenges loomed on the horizon, Julian felt imbued with newfound confidence. He was no longer the heir to an arrogant legacy, but an artist conquering his own narrative, steadfast in uncovering the beautifully flawed human experience. He departed the gallery that night, not into the shadows of doubt, but into a vibrant future, illuminated by the strength of his truth and the connections he had forged. This was his moment, full of absolute fulfillment. This was who he had always meant to be. Now is the time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to our channel to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more people find this transformative content. I want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about Julian's journey and ending below. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters.